Hello and welcome to another belated edition of Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Hunter King, Blind Eye himself, and sorry it's been a minute again. I think it's been like a week since the last stream. Just been super busy and stuff, but that being said, we have got a lot to get to. And I'm thinking about potentially doing the streams less frequently, like maybe 2 a week. But we shall see, or at the very least, shortening them. So, but today we got a ton to get to, a ton that I want to talk about. We've got a bunch of NBA playoff news since now all the second round series have started. And some of the results so far have been a little surprising, I think. But I'm gonna start today with the biggest news for me of the week in NFL land, which is Julio Jones is now on the Tennessee Titans, which I don't know about anyone else, but I don't know if there's a team with as good a three-headed monster for their quarterback to distribute the ball between than Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, and Derrick Henry. I'm not saying that Tennessee has the best total offensive weapons in the NFL now, but that three-headed monster is a really great triumvirate. I think the only teams that can really compete in that regard would be like the Vikings with Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. Man, Cleveland with Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb. And of course, they go even beyond that with Kareem Hunt, Hooper, and Njoku, Rashad Higgins. I would take all of those guys over any of the tight ends, backup running backs, and tertiary receivers on the Titans. Yes, I would take Rashad Higgins over Josh Reynolds. And I think Donovan Peoples-Jones has got great upside. I think he'll have a bigger role this year for Cleveland. Kind of continuing to kind of just think through all the other teams in the league. You've got Pittsburgh. They've got so many good receivers, but their top guys, Juju and you've got Najee Harris, who I think is going to be an elite back from the start, although I'm worried about that offensive line. And maybe then it's deciding who Deontay Johnson, I would say, is the other top receiver. But who knows, like Chase Claypool could turn out to be, and Deontay Johnson could end up being the top two receivers on this team above Juju when it comes to production, at least on a per reception basis, for sure. Because it seemed like, especially during the first half of the season, Deontay Johnson, and for most of the season, Deontay Johnson seemed like he was the number one guy. It seemed like he was the Antonio Brown of the team. And the Ravens look really wild going into the year. Their offense, adding Sammy Watkins and Rashad Bateman, they already have Marquise Brown and a guy who I think will take a jump in year 2, Devin Duvernay, who should be, I still think has an elite potential in the slot because of his speed and quickness. But you add those guys with, but you add their top two guys, which I'm not going to put Watkins there. I'm saying Marquise Brown and Rashad Bateman and J.K. Dobbins are going to be a really interesting three-piece this year. Like, I think Bateman, and I know they're a run-heavy offense, and maybe I'm crazy for putting Bateman ahead of Watkins, but I think Bateman is extremely good. Extremely good. And it would not shock me in the slightest if he is as good as the top 3 receivers from this class. Because actually, I think the gap between those top 3 guys and Bateman, Elijah Moore, and even Terrace Marshall, who went late in round 2, but I had it as a first-round guy. I don't think that gap's is really that big. I think Terrace Marshall out of all those guys is the guy who's being the most slept on because his frame is incredible. He's got great long speed. He's super smooth. If anything, I think Terrace Marshall, I don't necessarily believe he's as physical as Julio Jones, but if you're looking at how big Julio is and how fluid and smooth he is as a route runner, Terrace Marshall has a lot of that for a guy his size. But I'm not going to put them on like the triumvirate level of the Titans and Vikings. Then you've got the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and they're hoping Clyde Edwards-Helaire is more effective in year 2. Of course, the Browns, I mentioned them. And then the Cardinals are intriguing this year with all their weapons, but after Hopkins, I don't think A.J. Green's an elite receiver anymore. And their running back room's kind of just meh. So, and I'll say that the 49ers have a potentially elite group with Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and then whoever ends up the top running back between Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon. So, and do not be shocked if Trey Sermon ends up the lead back in San Francisco this year. I know they've got Mostert. I know they've got Jeff Wilson. Sermon is far more explosive than Wilson, and he's far stronger than Mostert. I wouldn't be shocked if Sermon ends up the bell cow back there. And there's some intriguing teams. Like the Giants have incredible weapons. You're looking at Kenny Golladay. Take whoever you want of their other top receiving options, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, and pair, and group them with Golladay and Barkley. Problem is they've got Daniel Jones at quarterback, and Daniel Jones is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and he has shown no progress over 2 seasons. He just seems progressively more turnover prone. So, yeah, I'm not super hopeful for him. And despite trading away Julio, the Falcons still have a really good the running back situation is not great, but they've still got Calvin Ridley. They drafted Kyle Pitts, and they have Hayden Hurst. But, I mean, really, they've got 2 pieces of a try, but Ridley and Pitts are still great players. But Pitts, of course, he's still a big receiving target, and those kind of bigger style guys tend to take a year to at least to translate and to get up to speed. But Pitts isn't like your typical tight end either. So, and he's such a special talent that I think he could pay dividends in year 1. Beyond that, I mean, I'm just kind of answering here, but the big takeaway, getting back to the Titans, is they're still having to replace Arthur Smith, losing Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith both sucked. But we were able to bring in Julio Jones. And Julio's going to take the heat off of everyone. He's going to make A.J. Brown more effective, which should be scary to everyone because A.J. Brown was already extremely effective as a player. Derrick Henry's still Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is still like the supersized second coming of Earl Campbell. And I've been hearing this go around now that the Titans plugged that big weakness. Everybody's like, yeah, but outside of A.J. Brown, they got no receivers. Now they have Julio. Now it's like, yeah, but Tannehill can't throw deep. Newsflash, people. Last season, Ryan Tannehill was the leader in passer rating on deep passing last year for the entire NFL. Not Mahomes, not Rodgers, not Allen, not Russell Wilson. Ryan Tannehill. And he wasn't throwing to Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams last season. He wasn't throwing to Stephon Diggs. He wasn't throwing to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Now, I'm not saying that to disparage A.J. Brown because A.J. Brown is a legit ascending, seemingly superstar caliber receiver. Corey Davis finally lived up to his billing as a number 5 pick last season. Just missed out on a 1,000-yard season. But, you know, those guys are still developing. Brown's still developing. Stephon Diggs, one of the best deep ball receivers in the league. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce in Kansas City. You've got Hill, who is surprisingly good, actually, in contested catch situations. But he's so fast, he's rarely in those. Travis Kelce is just... he boxes people out, and he pulls the ball down. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams is been one of the best receivers for half a decade now. Been an elite receiver for like half a decade now, or so. What year was he drafted? And then of course, DK Metcalf's just like a vertical freak. Tyler Lockett's really good. Davis, we'll see if he can keep it up in New York. If like this was for real, or if maybe Tannehill made Davis look better. If Arthur Smith's offense made Davis look better. If having A.J. Brown next to him taking the heat off made Davis better. If anything, like, there's a reason Ryan Tannehill went 8th overall in the 2012 draft. People saw that he had incredible physical tools and looked really good as a starter his 1 year as a starting quarterback in college. And you're talking about a guy who was arguably his team's best receiver before becoming the quarterback in college at Texas A&M. Great athlete. And he's had some injuries, but he's been healthy in Tennessee. And in 2 years, he's looked fantastic. And he's had some games where he struggled. I'm not calling Tannehill an elite QB, and I don't think he's the best deep passer in the NFL. He was, statistically speaking, last season, according to several metrics. But he's a great quarterback. And right now, he's borderline top 10 in the league. At least off of the last 2 years' worth of performances that we have. He's done a really good job of protecting the football and running that offense. And Derrick Henry makes everything easier because your play-action game is extremely dangerous because Derrick Henry is basically a guarantee for 4 yards a carry. 4+ yards every time he touches the ball. Which means you're getting a first down if you just hand the ball to him 3 times on average. So that brings that second safety up in the box. That's giving you more one-on-ones with your receivers. That's giving you more space in the intermediate and deep areas of the field when teams are having to crash so hard against Henry. So there's a lot going on. We'll see if the new offensive coordinator can keep up the efficiency of the Titans' offense, because the Titans have been extremely efficient as an offense. But I'll tell you this much: having Julio Jones is severely going to help that. And if you're wondering how much Tennessee believes in Tannehill and his abilities and how good he is right now, they restructured his contract to fit Julio in here. His cap hits the next 2 seasons are as high or up there with the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. I think it's like between $38 and $41 million both seasons. That's a lot of cash. But if he plays well this year, they might restructure that a second time and add on years. Who knows? But there's also an expected huge revenue spike, so they might not even be worried about potentially restructuring down the road until maybe the final year of his deal. I don't know. But he saved them like $15.5 million by restructuring his deal. And Julio, I can't remember exactly what he set to count this year. They could restructure his deal, but he's only going to count like $11.5 million a year over 2022 and 2023 on his current deal. So the Titans could potentially, especially if this year works out, go into next year and just give him a little bit of a raise, or at least give him some guaranteed money, put on a 3rd year. We'll see what happens. But Julio is going to be 32, I think, heading into the season. Any year could be the year that he falls off. AJ Green has already been dealing with severe injury problems, and even when he is healthy, he's not the same guy. Julio hasn't had near as many injuries as AJ Green, though, during his career. Although last year seemed like a significant injury because Julio missed 7 games last season. I think he only played 9 games. Still caught, I think it was like 51 passes for like over 700 something yards. So he was still extremely effective. But this is still a risk for the Titans, but one I think is worth taking. A 2nd and a 4th to get Julio, and we still got a 6th, so we're only out like one selection, like one cheapo contract, but it is going to come later than either of those 2 picks. So, but I'm comfortable with it. I was kind of hoping it would end up like us giving up a 2nd and a 5th, but honestly, I'm cool with it. I think Julio's going to be well worth it. So, as a Titans fan, I'm super happy. I think we've still got a young secondary outside of like Kevin Beard. But I like a lot of our young guys. I'm okay with us trending super young there. I'm still kind of amazed at us cutting Adoree Jackson because he got more money than he was going to make this year on his 5th year, and on his 5th year option. Well, we had picked up his 5th year option. Yeah, we had picked up his 5th year option. And on that, he's making less than he's going to make with the Giants this year. That, like, we cut him and they signed him to a 3-year, $39 deal. So either the Giants didn't read the market correctly and overvalued him, or the Titans didn't read the market correctly and cut a guy that they easily could have traded. But a guy that I wish was still on our roster, personally. But him not being there is one of the reasons we were able to restructure Tannehill's deal and be able to acquire Julio. So, I mean, whatever. But we've got some great young corners. I really like our cornerback room in terms of its potential. Christian Fulton improved throughout the season last year. I thought he could sneak into the back end of the first round. I thought he was a great value in the back end of the second round. Caleb Farley, if this back issue is as, chill of a thing, and it's not a long-term threat, like most people are saying, this really shouldn't be that big of a deal, then we got arguably the most talented corner in the draft. And arguably the highest upside corner in the draft in Farley. And then Elijah Molden that we got in the third round is a great slot corner. I think he can be an elite slot corner. He's got incredible instincts. He's a good tackler. I don't know. I think he'll fit really great into our defensive system. And then we have a bunch of, beyond Beard, we have a bunch of a couple young versatile safeties in Amani Hooker and Dan Cruikshank, who can play in the slot, who can play next to Beard. Like, they can play center field. They can play in the box. They can play slot. I love the versatility of our defense. And we picked up a veteran corner. Oh, and we picked up Janoris Jenkins. Jenkins is probably going to start. I don't necessarily love it, but he should be, at the very least, he should be a good veteran mentor for our young corners. And I thought we picked up another vet defensive back, but I can't remember right now. I wish we had brought back Desmond King as cheap as he went to the Texans for, because that would have been really nice. And I think we've got our pass rush situation figured out. And we could still, I think we still have the money that we could pursue one of the veteran pass rushers who are still on the market. Whether we go for a defensive lineman like an interior disruptor, like, he's aging, but Geno Atkins. Whether we try and maybe bring in Melvin Ingram to be part of a rotation. I think Justin Houston is still out there. I might be wrong on that. He might have already been picked up. I'd need to double check that. But there are a bunch of options that regard. I believe Sheldon Richardson's still on the market. But we did bring in Danico Autry already to pair with Jeffrey Simmons. And we seem to really, or the coaching staff seems to be really excited about Dalen Mack as our nose tackle of the future. So, and I really liked our draft. I know a lot of people were like, why didn't we draft a receiver in this loaded receiver class? And it's like, because obviously the coach or our front office decided to skip out on receivers this year. They took advantage of the depth, and value that showed up at cornerback. I wouldn't have believed anyone if they had told me Elijah Molden would be available at pick 100. Caleb Farley dropping to us. Yes, there's a bit of an injury red flag risk there, but I think it's more of a yellow flag than a red flag. And the talent's just too worth it. I mean, it really paid off for us when we picked Jeffrey Simmons because he fell due to injury concerns. So, getting Dylan Radins where we did late in the second round, I thought was excellent value. Because I thought the high end of his range was the end of the first round. And I certainly expected him to be off the board by the time it got to our pick. I thought there was a chance, but I thought it was a slim chance. But he got to us because teams took like Jackson Carman and Walker Little ahead of him. Now Walker Little is an elite prospect. He has dealt with a major injury, and then last year because of COVID, um, his season was complicated. But Walker Little was an elite prospect um, before his knee injury, and I think the Jaguars made a pretty good gamble drafting him. But I still would have taken Dylan Radins ahead of him right now. I think Radins is going to be or is an awesome fit for us. I love our offensive line. I love our receivers now. Tight end, I like Anthony Ferguson a lot. I'm not like thrilled about the rest of the tight end group. And of course, I'm happy about our running back situation. Finding Jeremy McNichols last year, who was a guy I thought, who I couldn't believe had not really gotten a shot. He was one of my favorite running backs in his draft class. He was solid as a secondary back last year. Darrington Evans being healthy this year, I think, is going to be a real plus for us, especially like as a receiving type back. But I don't know. I'm excited. I thought Monty Rice. I loved that pick in the 3rd round. Rashaan Evans is a guy we could end up trading potentially. And maybe we flip him for like some young developmental tight end or someone for our edge rush or defensive line rotation, or we just ride out the year with him, which is probably what's going to happen. But I think Evans, if he's healthy this year, I think he'll show improvement. But Monty Rice gives us a plan for the future because Evans and Brown are, I believe, free agents at the end of the year. Like Javon Brown, I thought we got a great deal on Brown at, I think it was $5 million a year, on the dot, like 1 year, $5 million. Gerard Davis got a contract from either the Jets or to go back to the Lions. I think it was for the Jets. It was 1 year, $5.5 million. Jayon Brown is far better than Gerard Davis has been. Gerard Davis, sure, he was a 1st-round pick, but Jayon Brown as a 5th-round pick has been better from him the entire time they have both been in the league at the same time together. Jayon Brown is one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. He's a great coverage backer, great sideline-to-sideline speed. And if I had to choose between bringing back him or Evans next year, I'm bringing back Brown. Full stop. But Monty Rice gives us a hedge for one or both of them leaving. And we still have David Long Jr., who has been a nice special teams and rotational linebacker. So, and once again, like Landry and Dupree as our edge rushers, I think is a really nice 1-2 punch off the edge with Autry and Simmons providing the interior rush. I still would like, and that was another thing we didn't really address, was getting a pass rusher, like a young developmental pass rusher in this draft. But the way the board fell, I think we managed our picks well. I thought we got great value out of our picks. Although I'd need to look at who was still on the board when we drafted Fitzpatrick. Yeah, it's Des Fitzpatrick. The Louisville receiver. Because, yeah, we definitely need a young receiver, but there were a couple receivers still on the board that I liked better than Fitzpatrick. But it is what it is. And definitely higher upside guys like Tamari and Terry, who went undrafted. But if I remember where he was drafted, there were still some like guys that I liked on the edge available. But I might be wrong. I need to go back and look at what pick he was selected out, see if they were still on the board or not. But with that being said, I'm excited about the Titans season. I'm going to move on from that. I'll spend a little more time than I meant to on that. So we're 2 games into to all the second-round series in the NBA playoffs right now. Last night, the Jazz beat the Clippers in Game 2 behind an amazing performance from Donovan Mitchell. 15 of 29 from the field. 6 of 12 from 3, 37 points. Although he picked up some kind of little injury late in the game, and he wasn't quite as effective down the stretch. But for the first, 2.5 quarters, he was lights out. They really hammered the Clippers the second quarter. They outscored them, I think it was 36-24 in the second quarter. And then held on from there. Clippers made a pretty good charge. The thing is that I would be scared of if I was the Jazz is the Clippers, they only shot, I think, 3 more or 2 more. I think it was 2 more free throws in the game than the Jazz, but the Clippers hit 7 more free throws than the Jazz. They got to improve their free throw shooting. And Mitchell, or at one point in the game, I think Mitchell didn't even really have that many free throw attempts either. So, he had a crazy night shooting the ball. But, and Rudy Gobert, ridiculous. I think he had 20 rebounds. Goodness gracious. He was just owning the glass last night. I think the Clippers actually, now he had, I think, 4 fouls in his 14 minutes, but they should have played Zubac more minutes because he was solid for them in his 14 minutes. I don't think they played him enough. I get what the Clippers were doing, and it kind of worked, spreading out a little more. But honestly, it just allowed Gobert to dominate the paint even more. And I think I don't know. It's hard. Because to me, it's you don't want to see the other team's center snagging 20 boards. But creating space offensively by spreading out and, having guys who are some fairly physically strong like Nicholas Batum, Marcus Morris. They have Cousins on their bench now, obviously, who gives you a little more stretchiness than Zubac at the position, although he's nowhere near the athlete or physical force that he was before his injuries. I don't know, but I would be concerned for the Jazz because they shot extremely well. I think it was 55% from the field. It's 52% from 3. And they only won by 6. And the Clippers didn't shoot extremely well. They shot I think it was 48% from the floor. I think it was 36.4% from 3, 36.5% from 3. The Clippers were solid offensively. Utah's going to have to draw more fouls. Utah's going to have to get to the line a little bit more. And when they do, they're going to have to hit more of those shots. Because the Clippers are one of the best shooting teams. Actually, I think they were the best shooting team in the league this year, particularly from distance. A 36.5% three-point performance, I think, is a little bit below their season average. I think it's below their season average. And they had a bunch of guys average 40% plus from 3 this year. I think the most in the league. And the Jazz are a great shooting team too. But if you're only winning by 6 points and you have field goal percentage disparities in your favor like that, that doesn't necessarily bode well for the rest of the series. But the Jazz are up 2-0. There's a reason they were the best team during the regular season. Donovan Mitchell is a legit superstar. Gobert, this is the best version of Gobert I think we've seen. And that supporting cast is awesome. I would also note, though, that last night, Jordan Clarkson in his, I think it was 27 minutes. think it was 27 minutes. Scored 24 points on incredible shooting splits and was still minus 10 while he was on the court for those 27 minutes. That's not good, because that means your defense while he's on the court is total trash can level. Lucky enough for him that the Jazz were extremely good in the minutes that Joe Ingles and Rudy Gobert were on the court. Royce O'Neal played outstanding defense. Actually, Royce O'Neal played the most minutes of any player in the game for the Jazz, if not entirely, last night with 41 minutes. I think the Jazz are obviously in good position. They're up 2-0, going to play the Clippers, in LA. But this Clippers team was down, or faced an elimination game in Game 6 against the Mavs, came back, and then won Game 7. This Clippers team has elite talent. I was kind of shocked at how few minutes Luke Kennard played last night. Rajon Rondo didn't get on the court for them last night. One thing I will say that should be a good note, though, for the Jazz is one of the reasons the Clippers were even in the game is because Reggie Jackson had one of the games of his life last night. He was ridiculous and arguably was the most impactful player for the Clippers last night. He was easily their most efficient scorer last night. He had a ridiculous game. So the Clippers shouldn't be able to count on that either. So maybe those concerns, the Jazz winning by 6 despite having much better shooting numbers, is balanced out by the fact that Reggie Jackson had a very non-typical Reggie Jackson game in terms of how great he played last night. So I still have the Jazz in that series. One of the shockers of so far was that the Hawks beat the Sixers in Game 1 in Philly of their second round series. Trae Young is incredible. Of course, the Sixers were without Embiid, I believe, for that game. But still, this Sixers team has been really good. They were really good even when Embiid was out this season. I still think the Sixers are going to pull it off, but this Hawks team looks like the Hawks team we were expecting when the season started. And here we go again with Nate McMillan being a better coach than anyone will give him credit for. And arguably right now, if you're just looking from a pure talent standpoint, this might be the most talented roster that Nate McMillan has had. At the very least, it's the most talented he's had since he had a healthy Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge on the same team. Because I believe he was the coach when Aldridge entered the league. Aldridge and Roy were there. And yeah, this is more talented than that Pacers team that, took the Cavs to a Game 7 behind, all NBA Victor Oladipo. Trae Young's ridiculously talented. John Collins is ridiculously talented. Clint Capella has been incredible this year. He's been like a Rudy Gobert light for the Hawks this year. He was for me, he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He was a third-team All-NBA candidate. Well, he'd be a third-team All-NBA guy or candidate, but, you had crazy season, MVP season from Jokic. You have Embiid. You have Gobert. There was no room. But Capella's been great this year and arguably is top 5 center this season. And then you've got all these young like wing pieces like DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, um, Kevin Huerter, and then of course you've got Bogdan Bogdanovic and Danilo Gallinari. Like, this is a very talented team. I was not shocked that the Hawks beat the Knicks at all. And I've got a little bit of a Knicks rant in me too, or at least should I say, I've got a New York bias rant in me that I'll get to later. But this Hawks team is dangerous. Young, it doesn't matter whether Young's shooting or scoring or if he's setting people up. He's an incredible shot creator and playmaker. And he's got guys around him who are playing at arguably their best this season at the right time. It's dangerous for the Sixers, but a healthy Embiid and Simmons with this Sixers team probably is. I mean, there's a reason the Sixers are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They've been great this season, and I still think they're going to pull this one out against the Hawks. But they're going to have to win a game on the road to get to get home court back. Going to the other Eastern Conference series, of course, the Nets came out and just destroyed the Bucks in games 1 and 2, and it looked like, well, this is over. And the Bucks just gritted out a tough 86-83 win at home behind Giannis, who shot terrible from 3. Like, oh my gosh, stop shooting. But was good at everything else. And Chris Middleton had a great game. They played insane defense. The Nets weren't hitting anything. But the thing was, the Nets weren't hitting anything. Kyrie Irving had like 1 assist the entire game. And they're not going to shoot that bad again. Like, they're just not. And honestly, and if you look at the box score, they were a plus team with Blake Griffin on the court in the game last night. He played really good. He's playing really good defense. So, I mean, Griffin's looking legitimately healthy right now. Whenever James Harden comes back, if Blake can keep this up, it's over for everyone. The Nets are going to win the whole thing. Like, no doubt in my mind. And they have a bunch of bigs they can throw at everyone. You've got Griffin, you've got Nick Claxton, you've got DeAndre Jordan that they can throw at Embiid. Like, they can throw bodies at him, like fresh bodies at him, and just kind of rotate that 5 spot out. Not that that's gonna like stop Embiid or slow him down much, but I think they're built to stop a team like the Sixers in that they're extremely versatile, and I think they'll be creative enough at using Ben Simmons' ability to shoot against the Sixers, like weaponizing that defensively. But if Harden's back healthy, like there's just not going to be any way to guard them for a 7-game series. Like right now, even without Harden, Brooklyn to a degree, like it didn't work last night, but they're still extremely difficult to guard. And I don't think the Bucks are going to win another game this series. I think the Nets are going to come out in Game 4. They're going to win, and they're going to go back to Brooklyn. They're going to end it there. Nets are still my pick for the title, but the Jazz are really, 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 really good. The Clippers have as much talent as anyone and should be a threat to everyone. And then the Suns, I think the Suns are still not getting enough talk. Monty Williams should have been the coach of the year. It should not have been Tom Thibodeau. I will get into that. I'm not mad. Like, Thibodeau is a deserving candidate, but it should have been Monty Williams. The Suns almost ended up the 1 seed. They were a game off of the Jazz for the best record in the NBA. They eliminated the Lakers, and you could talk about health and different things of that nature. That's true, but they still eliminated the Lakers, the defending champs, who everyone believed, that everyone believed had gotten better. Everyone believed the Lakers were better on paper going into the season. Now everyone's trashing Rob Pelinka and Frank Vogel and blaming them, and I'm sitting here like, they're supposed to see the future and see that Dennis Schroeder would get hurt, that AD would get hurt, LeBron would get hurt, that AD would get hurt in the playoffs, and then that LeBron would quit. Well, I guess you could see that coming if things went bad, that LeBron would shut down in a game that was very much still winnable, and that the rest of the team was actually playing pretty freaking well. I can't remember if I said this on the show last week, but I know I didn't get into this, but there's been a lot of talk about people trashing Pelinka and Vogel, and you're gonna give LeBron all the credit for victories, but give this is my problem. Because it goes for both sides on this. Everyone either wants to lay all the blame at LeBron's feet, or they want to give him all the credit. This is still a team sport. It's still a team sport. Michael Jordan didn't win all his championships by himself. He had arguably the best supporting cast of that decade around him. Or at least of those seasons, had arguably the best roster around him beyond him. Scottie Pippen was a top 5 player. During those 2 championship runs. And even during the years he was gone. Pippen was an MVP candidate level player. And they had other great players. Horace Grant was an all-star level player. Dennis Rodman is one of the best defenders and rebounders of all time. Tony Kukoc is one of the greatest international players ever. He and Drazen Petrovic and Arvydas Sabonis paved the way for guys like Dirk Nowitzki and Nikola Jokic. The Bogdanoviches, like all of those guys. Hedo Turkoglu. Giannis. I mean, Kukoc is one of the... and he was considered at the time, especially once Petrovic, tragically died in that car accident, like he was the best European player. He had Steve Kerr. They had Ron Harper. Harper was it was kind of like the Andre Iguodala of his time. Like Warriors Iguodala. So I don't like this. Like we throw everything at. It's like people either want to blame LeBron completely and give him all the credit. And it's like it's a team sport, and Pelinka and Vogel should get credit for building the championship team from last season and coaching the championship team from last season and their management of that. just I don't get this. Like, I don't think they did a bad job. The Lakers dealt with tons of injuries this year. Incredible amounts of injuries this year to key players, and still made the playoffs. Yes, they had to go through the play-in games, but they made it. And then it was an unfortunate injury to Anthony Davis. Now you can say, well, they made the team worse, and it's plain as day. They won the title. They didn't win the title this year. I was making that argument from the beginning that people were overblowing their improvement of their roster. That I didn't think that Montrezl Harrell was that much of an upgrade of a player over what they had last year. That I would rather have Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee than Montrezl Harrell. Particularly Dwight. That I thought they would miss Danny Green. And Danny Green has been instrumental in how good the Sixers have been this year. But really, the biggest blame is injuries. Injuries hurt them this season. Wasn't Pelinka's fault. Wasn't Vogel's fault. Was it LeBron's fault? Well, him quitting in Game 6 was definitely his fault. But this whole crisis, if there's a crisis in Lakerland this offseason, then it's because people are stupid. Like, if they think LeBron's leaving, that's retarded. And if LeBron really wants to just have this roster gutted, he's also stupid. Because this is a good roster. Still, but it definitely depends on people's prices. But Dennis Schroeder's a really good young player, but he dealt with injuries this year and couldn't really get back into form in time. Taylor Horton-Tucker looks like a rising guy. Alex Caruso's a good role player. Kyle Kuzma took big strides this year. They have pieces here. They just need to let some of these guys develop, and I would say do your best to kind of roll it back. If you can potentially improve your roster, do so. But I wouldn't sacrifice a Taylor Horton-Tucker and Alex Caruso or Kyle Kuzma necessarily to do it. But it depends on the offer. You should always be looking to improve your roster. But you shouldn't be flailing about just to change pieces. And you need to be careful about how old your roster gets as well. Because that was one of the things people were talking about was they got younger too. And not that, guys hitting a certain age means they're useless, but the older a guy gets, the closer he is to Father Time taking his game away. Every player is a ticking time bomb. We don't know when the timer is going to go off, but the older you get, the closer you are to it. But anyway, back on the Suns-Nuggets series. The Suns are going to take this one. DeAndre Ayton is playing incredible interior defense. I don't think he has a block over the first two games, or a block in the series. He might have one. But he's playing incredible defense on Jokic. As a team, the Suns are playing great defense. Monty Morris of the Nuggets seems like he's just lost his game. Like, the Monstars decided we're going to steal Monty Morris's game instead of, Jokic's. Michael Porter Jr. has been up and down. Paul Millsap his minutes have been a crater. I just don't think his legs have it in him, at this point. I feel like J. Michael Green is getting too many minutes. Aaron Gordon wasn't great in that last game. And the Suns are just on fire. In the first game, the Suns starters, I think, combined for 97 or 99 points. It was ridiculous. I think I think it was like 4 guys in the starting lineup had over 20 points. This game, the scoring was more balanced. No one scored 20 points for the Suns, but they had a bunch of guys, including bench guys, who scored. It was just an incredible team effort. This Suns team is just playing really good. Chris Paul's on a mission this season. And if that shoulder doesn't flare up, and if he can keep his legs healthy, this team could make the finals. This team could beat the Jazz. They're going to beat the Nuggets. So this is going to be fun. But we've also gotten our awards or the awards in, but my screen just flipped. I don't know how much y'all just missed. But yeah. So for me, it's difficult. It's difficult for me to believe that anything other than New York media bias is the reason that Tom Thibodeau won Coach of the Year. Like I said, he's a deserving candidate, but the Suns have been in worse shape for longer than the Knicks have. It's been longer since the Suns made the playoffs than the Knicks. And up until the bubble last year, the Suns were still kind of a struggling team. They made a much bigger turnaround than the Knicks did. They have made a much bigger turnaround than the Knicks have under Monty Williams than the Knicks have under Thibodeau. But New York media bias, that Northeast media bias. And the Suns are overshadowed because everyone just had the Lakers beating them in the first round. Like, because even out there's that West Coast bias. There's that bias towards, particularly the Lakers and now the Warriors. But the Clippers probably would have been favored over the Suns too. So, whatever. But Monty Williams should have been Coach of the Year. The Suns had the second best record in the league. And they did so after being a non-playoff team last year. And Monty's never won a Coach of the Year. Like, Thibodeau has won. And he got that Coach of the Year deservedly. There was, to me, that season, there was no other choice. But this year, Monty Williams was the guy. And if anything, maybe this should have been the year that Quinn Snyder should have gotten a Coach of the Year award. Because the Jazz were the best team in the league. But they've been really good. They've been up at the top of the Western Conference. The Suns haven't been. They haven't been in a long time. The Knicks have made the playoffs since the Suns last did. And yeah, the Knicks have been horrendous. The Suns were arguably a more horrendous organization than the Knicks. The reason the Knicks are dysfunctional is because the fan base and the media are dysfunctional. And they care so much about the Knicks. People don't care about... It's like the media doesn't care about the Suns. And that's why Monty Williams didn't get the Coach of the Year. And it's crap. It's just a load of crap. And we've been hearing media people ever since the end of the season talking about how Zion should demand a trade out of New Orleans. We need to get, like Pat McAfee talking about, we need to get Zion out of New Orleans. Why? Like this is the bull crap. You know, Pat McAfee's building like a media empire based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. You can do it anywhere. You can be a superstar anywhere. Be the superstar for a small market team and use your wattage to make that city, to make that fan base, to make that market more attractive. You don't have to be in New York. You don't have to be in LA. You know, as connected as we are now and being able to do what, to be global and to reach whoever you want from wherever you want. I don't understand why we're still centered on these two stupid cities. Like, it's stupid. It's irritating. It's why Dame Lillard is so freaking refreshing and so awesome. No, I'm not leaving Portland. It's like if people want to win, they can come play with me. I love that. I truly believe Ja Morant's that same type of guy, and that's how he's going to be in Memphis. Take it or criticize him all you want, and I have my critiques of him. Russell Westbrook was that guy for Oklahoma City. And Bradley Beal seems to be that kind of guy. Like, he wants to make the Wizards work. Giannis is committed to Milwaukee. Like, I love that kind of stuff. I love those kind of guys. So, anyway, the media bias is annoying. The Knicks and Lakers bias is annoying. The greatest, longest running dynasty in freaking basketball of my lifetime was the Spurs. 20 years, basically, of just excellence in San Antonio. Dirk got a championship in Dallas. I mean, the Celtics are iconic, but, like, Boston's not a free agent market. That's been proven. Yet look at how many banners they've gotten. And they've gotten, they've gotten one in my lifetime. Although it's been harder, Because back in the day, like, yeah, some players would want to try and get to marquee markets like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did, but for the most part, guys wanted to become great and make the team that drafted them great. And that just doesn't seem to be the case anymore for a lot of guys. Now, I think maybe that's flipping because I think a lot of these young players, they respect a lot of the guys like LeBron and Kawhi and whatnot. But I don't think they don't want to deal with the drama, and they don't want to be looked at in the way that LeBron, KD, Kawhi, Kyrie, and those, that list goes on. I think a lot of them don't want to be looked at as this guy who just decided, I'm going to mercenary, or I'm going to do everything for myself. Well, and I think they want their legacies to look differently. Because that's going to be a thing that's always going to, and especially with the Clippers move now, if Kawhi doesn't get a title, it's kind of, I think to a degree everyone's going to be like, he just wanted to be in LA and he didn't want to play with LeBron. So he went to the Clippers and, rolled out the rest of his career. he went to Toronto and got his chip, or got another chip, but he left San Antonio high and dry. He screwed them over. He screwed over a fan base that loved and adored him. LeBron jumping around to Miami, back to Cleveland, then to LA. KD, leaving OKC for Golden State and then going to Brooklyn, which I have no problem with any of those moves. I don't. Well, I do a little bit with Kawhi because of the trade demand. Like, it wasn't like your contract was up and you made a choice. You bullied your team and and hurt it long term. He hurt the Spurs long term. Obviously a superstar leaving is going to hurt the team regardless, but you force the team basically to hurt itself is kind of the thing. But I don't know. We'll see moving forward if there's more people staying still or not. Because I think a lot of the young players, I think they want to be like Dame. I think they want to be like D Wade. And yeah, I know he ended up in Chicago for, what was it, a year. Chicago was his hometown, like, whatever. But I think that's what guys want to be like. And can we please get Seattle a team? I don't care if they move the Timberwolves. Honestly, they probably should move the Timberwolves to Seattle. Sorry, Minnesota fans, but they're constantly one of the worst attended teams in the league. That market's trash. That city is trash. It's got trash leadership. I just hope these guys that are buying the team move the team to Seattle. Not that I necessarily have any love for Seattle, but they should have never lost their team in the first place. And unlike Minnesota, though, Oklahoma City rabidly supports the Thunder. So, so I guess that's those thoughts. Let's see what time it is. How long have I been going? Sorry, I couldn't read that. I've been going a little over an hour. So I'm going to end this off with, I was just kind of thinking about this. I was talking about offensive weapons earlier, but I have been thinking about like quarterback rankings. I think I did a stream where I talked about like the teams specifically, but I'm working on like just a particular quarterback tiers list. Like splitting up the quarterbacks in tiers, like, like I have a GOAT tier, and there's 3 guys in that. Because Tom Brady is still playing, and he is the GOAT. Aaron Rodgers, you can argue, is the GOAT of that next generation of quarterbacks. And then Patrick Mahomes is the ascending one. Like, he's the heir to the throne, if you will. And you could argue there's like a generation between like Mahomes and Rodgers. And that one, I think you've got like a couple options for. But it's either Andrew Luck or Russell Wilson. Luck in terms of talent and pedigree, and unfortunately his career was just cut short prematurely. But, Wilson's got himself a Super Bowl trophy and is extremely, extremely good. So, Like Brady, like that generation was like Brady, Manning, Breeze, those guys. And of course, the crazy thing that a lot of people forget is Rodgers was drafted the year after, um, Eli, Big Ben, Philip Rivers, like that gang. um, Manning and Rivers have already retired. Roethlisberger is done after this year. I think. This is it. Rodgers going, and Rodgers I think still has several years left. So, but we don't think of Rodgers as being around that long because he sat behind Brett Favre for 3 years. He didn't become the starting quarterback until 2008. So, but I'm working on a tier list. I think some of my placements will be interesting, and my placements for the rookie quarterbacks are interesting because it's not talking about their future, but it's just where they are right now. And spoiler alert, Trevor Lawrence is in the highest tier out of those quarterbacks, and Justin Fields is in the lowest, or is out of those 5 first-round quarterbacks, he's, the lowest. But that's just because I think he has more developing to do. Let's see. Was there anything else I remember that I wanted to talk about? Oh, yeah. And then the other big news, because I have some thoughts on this. College football playoff expansion. I think it's coming. This proposal, I believe, is going to get unanimous approval. So the SEC, Big 12 commissioners, the athletic director for Notre Dame, and then the Mountain West Conference commissioner have put together a proposal for a 12-team playoff, which, if anyone has followed the channel, knows that I've been a proponent of an 8 or 12-team system. On a previous stream, I'm pretty sure on a previous stream, I know I've talked to other people about it, but having a NFL-style playoff system, not the new one with 14 teams, but the 12-team format. I think this is great. So here's the skinny of how it'll work. So the 6 highest-ranked conference champions will get automatic bids. There are 10 FBS conferences, so that means that a guarantee that one of the conference champions from the group of 5 will be in the playoff. So there we're talking about UCF, who has been the cream, and Cincinnati, like of the AAC, or just whoever is the best team in the AAC. Potentially whoever the winner of the MAC is. Boise State out in the Mountain West. The Sun Belt Conference champion. So, or Conference USA champion could make it, depending on who is the highest ranked out of those conferences, like champions. And it's possible that 2 of them could be ranked higher than, say, a bad conference champion from, like, say, if there's a multiple loss conference champion from, like, the Pac-12 and people don't think they're that good or whatever. Although it's probably unlikely. Whoever the conference champion will probably be or ranked higher than, or all the conference champions in the Power 5 conferences will be ranked ahead. But it basically guarantees that a group of 5 conference champion will make the playoff. So, like I said, the 6 highest ranked conference champions are the top 6 seeds, and the top 4 of those conference champions, the 4 highest ranked of those 6 conference champions, will get first round byes. So they'll automatically be in the second round, just like the NFL. Then the last 6 spots will be the highest ranked teams left, according to the selection committee. So, which, once again, gives a shot to even a second group of 5 team making it. If you have 2 or 3 really good, like, group of 5 teams, it's possible that Cincinnati, like, if Cincinnati and UCF, are both one-loss teams and are both really good, and maybe say they play each other twice and one wins the regular season matchup, one wins the conference championship, it's possible that those 2 teams could both make the playoff. And then for Independence, this gives, like, the Independents a shot. So what's interesting is, once again, the Notre Dame's athletic director was one of the people who constructed this. This definitely benefits Notre Dame because it makes it easier for them to get into the playoff because you don't have to be one of the 4 best teams in the country. But they and, say, a team like BYU would be disallowed from getting a bye because they aren't in a conference. So they would only be able to be seeded 5 through 12. They would have to play in the first round. But this scenario gives you the ability to have BYU and Notre Dame in. And say, if BYU were to once again, like, say, run the table or whatever, or just finish, in the top 10 or, like, say, the top 12 teams, they'd make it. And this will probably end up being, like, the top 12 teams in the college football playoff make it, but that definitely depends on, like, the conference champion status. If, one of those group of 5 conference champions ends up in the top 12 or not. Because if not, that team will still get in, but that just means beyond that, only the top, say, 11 teams will get in or whatever. But I think this is a great proposal. It gives us more football, more games that matter, and more games that matter, because this is going to make November matter more. Because it's not just going to be like, well, what teams are still vying for, like, conference championships, whatever. Like, this gives, like, that second tier of teams and even a third tier of teams, like, far more. I mean, it just gives more motivation. And it gives the fans more intrigue. I think this is a win-win. And we don't have to argue about, like, well, when it comes to conference champions, which conference champion do we leave out? Or if we believe that there are 2 teams from the same conference that should be in the playoff, which conferences are we leaving out? Now, everyone's going to be involved. And that I like. And this is going to get the group of 5 into the playoff finally. We're going to get to see. We are going to get to see if this passes, which, from what it sounds like, it seems like everyone's going to vote for this. This is a big deal. This is going to give them a chance. We're going to get to see the UCFs of the world. Cincinnati, BYU, Coastal Carolina, Liberty, like 1 or 2 of those teams get a shot every year. I'm pumped for that. So, anyway, we've been clamoring for it, and we're getting it. And that's good. So, with that being said, I'm going to end the show for today. I appreciate you for tuning in. This has been Blind Eye Live. If you liked anything that, if you liked the show at all today, please leave a like. If you want more, subscribe, hit that bell icon, set notifications to all so you don't miss a stream. And if you have any thoughts on what I talked about today, please leave a comment. I read comments, and if any of them are interesting, I'll address them. So, appreciate y'all. And like I said, I may not be streaming Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday anymore. I might only be doing 2 streams a week. We'll see. I'm gotten kind of busy with some other stuff. So yeah. Anyway, appreciate y'all. Hope y'all have a great weekend. and I'll probably see you on Monday. Later.